This is Steve Loomis with Walking That Mile. So, this is what I'm going to talk about today is a case that you probably have heard about, depending on where you are in the country. You probably at least heard about it. I wanted to talk about this a couple of days ago, but I was lucky enough to get to go to some training for something that I'm passionate about: internet crimes against children, and because of that, then I wasn't able to do this and talk about this. So this case is a couple of days old. As far as where it's at now, and the the case that went on in Minnesota, and now the DOJ has snapped it up and is going federal with the case. But so it's been out there for a couple of days. I still, I'm really, this was, I had a visceral reaction to this case when I heard about it. And so I really wanted to do it right away. And like I said, um, I got lucky enough to go to this training. The training was about, it just really reinforced everything that I've ever said as far as cell phones, kids having cell phones, kids having smartphones, and kids having social media. Absolutely not. My kids will not have any of that stuff because they are so dangerous. And this case is case in point. An app that was used in this case was Snapchat. Snapchat, in my opinion, is the devil. And our kids have no business being on Snapchat. Unfortunately, there are so many more of those same types of messaging apps like Snapchat that the whole phone thing, for me, they until they're 16 or 18 years old, they really don't need any sort of smartphone at all. Now I know that can cause some problems with people's plans and all that kind of stuff, but the reality is kids can get so deep on those phones into so much trouble so fast that it's not worth it in my opinion. So anyway, the case that I really wanted to talk about was this case of, and I don't know exactly how to pronounce the guy's name. Do the best I can here. Yeah, here he is. Abdimahat Billy Mohammed. He's a 28-year-old Somali male. He's a permanent resident of Minneapolis or surrounding area. He's not a legal citizen, but he's like a permanent resident. He's also a convicted sex offender. What we're going to talk about today is that he pled guilty back in April or May to two sexual assaults. One involving a minor, one involving an adult female. He pled guilty to those two, and he received probation because he was charged and pled guilty in Hennepin County. And if you know anything about Hennepin County, you know Hennepin County is run by Mary Moriarty. And Mary Moriarty, well, she's a joke. She's so much of a joke that she ran once. She got elected, and in August of this year, she's already said she's not going to run again. She knows that everybody thinks that she's a joke. Her policies are so terrible, and people are so on her about everything that she does because it's so terrible. She thinks that the suspects, the predators, are victims. She treats them like victims, and everybody's pretty much sick of her. Unfortunately, she still has like a year left before we can elect somebody else to replace her. So again, this case involves Abdimmahat Mohammed. He pled guilty to two sexual assaults in Minnesota, and one was it wasn't a delayed report, but it was from 2017, and there was DNA collected from the case, and he was not identified as a suspect until just recently, I think in 2024. And so But that was a juvenile at that time. Horrific case. That case in itself should have put this guy behind bars for like 20 years. But so there was the case that was delayed because the DNA didn't come back to anybody until it hit on him. And so he pled guilty to um, what they actually did. And the other thing that I wanted to do here was show you. I wanted to get people a little bit some hands-on experience here, as far as, we hear about these cases on the news and we accept the news, the report on the news as it is. But in Minnesota, it's very easy to look this stuff up and see what actually is going on in a case that maybe is not reported on, either because it's a biased report or because they don't have time to give you all the details. So these two horrific cases that they pled down to give this guy probation are here. So here is, you can see I just Googled Minnesota State Court Records, and if you click on this, case search, accept, yes, and I've got this guy's information saved here, so you got to go last name and first name, and his name is so unique that this should be enough. I mean, it is enough. I know it is enough. So here you go. Here is everything that he's been charged with in Minnesota. So you've got some traffic things. This was actually parking. But here's one of the cases right here. I got to get this out of my way here. So 2024 case. This case was actually, as you can see, the offense was in 2017. So this was the delayed one. But you can see the charges. There's one, two, they're listed. There's 6 charges here. Okay. There originally were only 5 charges. And I'll get into why that's interesting. So kidnapping, obviously terrible. Felony, I can't, and under 16 at the time. Again, you should get many years in prison just for that one charge, okay? Crim sex, 2 armed with a weapon. So the allegations were that he and at least one other person, one of them was armed with a weapon and made this person do what she, forced her to do what she did because they had a gun, okay? Second degree criminal sex, fear of bodily harm, first degree penetration with a weapon, and great bodily harm. Okay, you can see that all of those are dismissed. And what they did, so they didn't originally charge this third degree murder, or not murder, third degree sexual assault. They added that on so that then they could plea it just down to that charge. So third degree sexual assault. So he pled guilty to that, and then the other charge is this one. So this one was from 2024, and same scenario here. Look at assault the police officer after he was arrested in this case, third degree penetration, first degree penetration force, and first degree penetration fear of great bodily harm. All of those were dismissed. They added on fifth degree crim sex, and he pled guilty to that. So those are the 2 charges that he actually pled guilty to. Now this is terrible. Okay, this is unbelievable that he would be allowed to plead guilty to this. He did, but he didn't just get probation. He was sentenced to time served. So while he was waiting for this, while somebody, I think, was maybe actually trying to charge him with these bigger crimes, he did sit in jail. He sat in jail for a year. and so he was sentenced to time served. He was actually sentenced to like 5 years, so the rest of it is stayed, which means that there's 5 years or 4 years now hanging over his head, and he would be on probation. And if he violated his probation, he could go back to jail for those 4 years. Except that you in Minnesota, at least from what I've experienced, you can be on probation, you can get additional charges, and they wouldn't even violate. They might violate your probation, but you would be in jail for a month or so. You wouldn't just automatically get, a violation and be back in jail for 4 years. And if it was 4 years, it would be prison. So that's what happened in this case. Okay. DOJ, when they heard about this, because he then got picked up for another sexual assault. Okay. So this was back in April or May of 2025. He just got picked up for another sexual assault in early December, and now is in violation of his probation, right? So you can see the other thing I wanted to show you was that you can actually click in here, view case, and you know that I'm a police officer, but this is not anything special that I have. You don't have to have a login for this. This is completely anonymous. This is just go to the website, click in, search for people. They don't know that you're searching. Again, you don't need a login for this at all. So here he is. And this, you can see on this side here that this is considerably longer, because here is the case, the way that it lays out. So this is what I wanted to show you is here. This is why these cases take so long. So here's the charging complaint, charge complaint. If you click on that, you download it. And I'm not sure if I'm sharing this or not. I don't think I am. So let's get in here. Stop sharing. There we go. There you go. Okay, so you can see the complaint now. This is the complaint. And again, this is all public information. This is out there for you to search anytime you want. Go to the Minnesota court, search for somebody's name, everybody's traffic tickets and whatever. It's all on there. Some of the detail is not entered in there, and it is what it is. But here, this is called a complaint. So here are all the charges. This is the statutes, the maximum, penalty as far as years you would serve, fine you would serve, and then a brief description of what the probable cause in this case that makes it fit with that charge. So here's all the six. Again, here's the 5 counts. That third degree crim sex is not on here because it was not in the original. They added it. They gave him the lowest felony that they could find, tapped it on there, and then let him plead to that. And then here's a description of the whole case. I'm not going to read this for you, but it's called the complaint. So it's enough to get him charged. It's not the full case. It's not everything that they know. It's not all the evidence that they have. It's enough to get them charged. And here's like a big one, DNA. Here's the DNA that, because this originally happened in 2017, the DNA came back to him because he was in custody. He had to provide DNA because he was a predatory offender. And that goes into the national database, and they run all the unknown DNA samples from sex assaults and homicides and other cases, and they got a hit on him for this case. So that's how this works. And then you can see like how great the DNA testing is. So it said the swabs, it was this 99.9996% of the general population of the entire world can be excluded. and not him. So that's just saying it is him. You know, it's a match with him. So I encourage you to look cases up when you have time. If you hear something on the news about a case and you're confused or it doesn't sound quite right, you can get a lot of good information by going here. It's all public information. Get out of that. So there's that. So the DOJ came down on Mary Moriarty and the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, and did a press release. And I just wanted to first read Moriarty's comeback to this, talking about why they did such a poor job. So she says yesterday's DOJ press release is a clear attempt to politicize the sexual assault prosecution to inflict further harm on our entire Somali community. Right off the bat, right? He's Somali, and right off the bat, it's racist, right? We are here to inflict harm on the whole Somali community because we are trying to get justice for the rape victims in these cases. And so, according to Mary Moriarty, it is racist and it is inflicting harm on the entire Somali community if you charge a member of their community with all the cases that you actually have against that person. So we know this is a political stunt. We know this is a political stunt because we are well aware of the DOJ's track record on violence against women under the current administration. Just a swipe at Trump for no good reason, right? You're supposed to be talking about a sexual assault case, suspect, and how about the victims in this case? Let's maybe, you're the prosecutor. You're supposed to be going to bat for the victims. And yet, here you are being political. Again, she's a disaster, and she knows it, and she's not going to run again. So those who actually prosecute sexual assault cases every day know there are significant evidentiary hurdles to obtain a prison sentence that incapacitates the defendant so that they can't inflict more harm in the community. It's absolutely true. I investigate them. Yes, there are evidentiary hurdles. That's absolutely true. But you have a guy plead guilty to 2 of them, and you can't get him to serve any additional time besides the year that he sat in jail waiting to go to trial. That's pretty terrible. The office overcame the loss of critical witnesses, which is really interesting. So I assume they're claiming that the victims in this case didn't want to testify anymore. And that may be true. That's one of the most infuriating things about investigating these cases and trying to get them charged and getting them charged. And what, of course, I always need to recognize and needs to be in the forefront is the victim, right? So like, I want justice for them. I want justice because I want this guy put away. But what is very frustrating is that these cases take so long that victims sometimes say, I'm done. Like, I want to move on. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to go through all of this. It's been over a year. Oftentimes it's been multiple years. In this case, it was a delay from 2017. And I don't want to rehash this. And I know that once you charge somebody, then there's motion after motion and hearing after hearing for multiple years sometimes before this actually goes to trial. And I just want to be done and I want to move on. And so sometimes that happens. Like I understand that does happen. And so we either have to get a plea deal to get something, or sometimes the cases outright get dismissed. Now, these are pretty egregious cases. Some of the cases that I'm talking about are lower level. Now, it's all sex assault. It's all terrible. But these are lower level cases, not involving weapons and not involving full, penetration and that kind of stuff. So yes, that is true. While the DOJ performs politics at the expense of victims, our office provides actual support to victims every day by upholding victims' rights, providing cultural, responsive, and trauma-informed services, and prioritizing victims' safety and needs. Again, I don't know the victims in these cases, but she is very focused. She's very focused on cultural responsiveness, um, to the suspects. Really, in these cases, she made it. She put out a policy that said that my attorneys under me will take race into consideration when offering plea deals. As in, if the race is not white, we should offer them less harsh punishment. Is what it is. And she thinks, no, it's absolutely something that we can do. DOJ is looking into that too. The current federal administration is more adept at pardons for violent insurrectionists and drug traffickers than prosecutions. If they intend to start caring about public safety and victims, we recommend they end their cover-up of pedophiles and those who protect them. It's like a very interesting statement, because she, in this case, is covering for a rapist. Okay, so here's the thing. We know about these two cases at this point, and then he gets picked up for a third, which is how this all kind of came to light, that he was offered these plea deals back in April or May, is because he now was picked up again for another sexual assault. And turns out that the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, there was a case back in 2018 that they agreed just plain not to charge, that he was a suspect in. I don't know how far into the case they were, but they agreed not to even charge it so that he could plead to these two low-level offenses and get probation. Okay, so now that's the Hennepin County Attorney's Office response to this. Now, here is the DOJ's. Their press release from December 4th. Serial kidnapper and rapist charged federally. Mohammed allegedly kidnapped and gang raped a 15-year-old girl and multiple women. So, Mohammed, 28, was charged by complaint with kidnapping a minor and kidnapping. So, kidnapping a minor and kidnapping an adult. So, two different cases. Announced U.S. Attorney Daniel N. Rosen. As detailed in the complaint, Mohammed kidnapped and raped a 15-year-old girl in 2017 and an adult woman in 2025. In between, he raped at least 3 other women. Okay? 3 other women. This Somali national in Minnesota is charged with raping a minor and multiple adult women before being detained, only to be quickly released by local courts in Hennepin County, after which he committed yet another rape. This horrific case illustrates how left-wing soft-on-crime policies and vetting failures put innocent people at dire risk. Well, that's absolutely true. She is quoted as looking into the research about prison, about people who, go into prison and go into prison for a long time for murder or sexual assault, and they come out and they're likely to offend again. Well, if they're charged with a major crime and they go away for 20 years, well, they're removed from society and cannot rape or kill anybody outside of prison for 20 years. That's pretty good. It's a good chunk of time that the community is safe from this person. Which is one reason why she likes to use probation and alternative ways of getting justice, I guess, is what she says. And so she puts this guy right back out on the street. You know what? Somebody who you're mad after being in jail for 20 years or in prison for 20 years, and you get out and you might be mad and might want to do something again, do something bad again. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I understand that. But how about emboldening criminals by saying, this horrific thing that you did, we're going to let you plead down to almost nothing and give you probation because we think that you can turn it around. How about emboldening that person to then go and do it again because they don't have any penalties, which is exactly what happened here. This horrific case illustrates how left-wing, soft on crime policies and vetting failures put innocent people at dire risk. In Minnesota, if Minnesota will not protect its own people, the Department of Justice will do it for them, said Attorney General Pamela Bondi. The allegations are sickening. Multiple kidnappings and rapes, including against minors, and they happen in a state that has chosen ideology over public safety. Minnesota's radical, soft-on-crime policies created an environment where predators believe they can act without consequence. President Trump was elected to restore law and order, and under Attorney General Pam Bondi, this department is making sure violent criminals like this will face real justice and spend the rest of their natural lives in federal prison, said Deputy Attorney General Tom Blanche. Given the history of the state prosecution of Abdemahat Mohammed, my office will aggressively prosecute this serial rapist. So here's the actual cases that they have against him. December 3rd, 2025, federal law enforcement received information concerning violent kidnappings and rapes committed by Mohammed in Minnesota. Law enforcement and the U.S. Attorney's Office immediately investigated and found that, as set forth in the complaint, there is probable cause to believe that Mohammed committed a string of disturbing sexual assaults, several of them gang rapes, of at least 5 victims between 2017 and 2025, many following the same pattern. Mohammed faces a mandatory minimum sentence of 20 years of imprisonment and up to a sentence of life for his crimes. So, first one, December 12, 2017, Mohammed and two others kidnapped and raped a 15-year-old girl. So minor victim 1 met Mohammed online on the social media platform Snapchat, right? Devil's app. Mohammed agreed to give minor victim 1 a ride, picked her up in St. Paul. Instead of driving her to her requested location, Mohammed drove minor victim 1 to Minneapolis against her will. Mohammed parked his car in Minneapolis. Suddenly, 2 more men got in the car. One of them was holding a short-barreled silver revolver. The man pointed the gun at the victim's head and said, "Give my brother bleep, or I'll blow your bleep off." Minor 1 was forced to perform oral sex on one of the 2 men. She was then sexually assaulted by Mohammed. After the group assaulted her, they let her out of the car. She ran and hid and called police. The police took her to the hospital where she consented to an exam. And on September 17, 2024, Mohammed's DNA was taken in connection with another sexual assault, and they matched it up to the swabs from this assault. Okay, so that's number 1. February 7th, 2018, Mohammed and 2 others, again, gang, raped an adult woman. In the early morning hours of that day, Roseville police received a call from a Lyft driver reporting that he had a woman in his car who had been sexually assaulted by 3 men. Police responded to the scene and interviewed victim 2. She explained that a man she knew from Instagram picked her up in his car. He and 2 other men held her against her will in the car. The men raped her. After they were done assaulting her, the men released her, telling her the cops were coming. Not really sure what that. She ran to a Motel 6 to charge her phone and call a Lyft to pick her up. When victim 2 told Lyft driver what happened, he called 911. Police took victim 2 to the hospital, where she consented to an exam. Police located condoms in a car that had been on scene, and they connected Muhammad's DNA to DNA from the recovered condom. May 8th, 2018, Muhammad and another man, gang, again, kidnapped and raped an adult woman. Victim 3 knew Muhammad from Snapchat, the Devil's app, but had never met him in person before. Muhammad drove to victim 3's house in St. Paul, and victim 3 sat with him in the car. Victim 3 asked Muhammad for a pack of cigarettes. Instead, Muhammad began to drive away. Victim 3 protested, explaining she couldn't leave her apartment as her son was inside. But Muhammad continued to drive and locked the car doors so the victim could not escape. Muhammad drove victim 3 to Minneapolis. He pulled the car into an alley where Muhammad raped her. After the rape, a second man got in the back seat. He was holding a black semi-automatic handgun. He pointed the handgun at the victim's head and said, "If you don't give me head, you're not going to live." Victim 3 then did perform oral sex on the second man under threat of her life. After they were done, Muhammad and the other man pushed the victim out of the car. Victim ran until she arrived at the gas station. She asked for directions to the light rail, which she took back to St. Paul. She then contacted the St. Paul police, who took victim 3 to the hospital, where she consented to a sexual assault exam. In September of 2024, the BCA laboratory matched Muhammad's DNA to the swabs taken from victim 3. May 30th, 2024, Muhammad raped an adult woman. Victim 4 knew Muhammad from Snapchat, the Devil's app. Muhammad picked up victim 4 and her sister in his car, and instead of taking them for something to eat, drove the 2 women to his apartment in Minneapolis. Muhammad carried victim 4 to his bedroom and threw her on the bed and closed the door. Muhammad tried to force victim 4 to give him oral. When she refused, he raped her. Muhammad told victim 4 that if she didn't have sex with him, he would get a gun from his car and shoot her or her sister. Victim 4's sister heard screaming and her sister saying, "Stop." Victim 4 opened the door, observed the situation, crying, stumbling. The victim 4 was victim and victim 4's sister fled the building. Victim 4's sister fled the building and called police. When the police arrived, they found victim 4 and Muhammad in the apartment. Victim 4 was crying and stumbling. When victim 4 was away from Muhammad, she explained he had raped her. Police took victim 4 to the hospital. She consented to a sexual assault exam. Police arrested Muhammad and took him to the hospital for an exam as well. Muhammad became hostile. He kicked squad doors and windows, spat on officers, and eventually became assaulted with hospital security guards and nurses. He was kicked out of the medical center before the predatory exam could be completed. In 2024, pursuant to a search warrant, law enforcement collected DNA from Muhammad. In September 2025, Muhammad committed another kidnapping and rape. On September 15th, Muhammad picked up an adult woman in Mankato. Victim met Muhammad that night, and Muhammad was supposed to take victim 5 to get food and then bring her home. Instead, after victim 5 was in Muhammad's car, he kidnapped her. After victim 5 asked Muhammad to bring her home, Muhammad kept driving and said, "You are not going home." Muhammad drove victim 5 approximately 70 miles to a hotel in Bloomington, where he kept her for nearly a week. When victim 5 tried to leave on the first day, Muhammad grabbed her by the hair, slapped her face, told her she could not leave. Muhammad raped victim twice. Muhammad choked victim while he was raping her. Victim 5 was able to text her sister that I think I'm getting kidnapped and needed help, but Muhammad took her phone away. Victim 5's sister contacted the police, who worked to find victim 5 on September 21st, 2025. Victim 5 jumped out of Muhammad's car and told a nearby man, "Can you help me? I am being kidnapped." The man called 911 and police responded to the scene. Police took victim 5 to the hospital, where she consented to a sexual assault exam. The DNA profile obtained from victim 5 matched Muhammad's known sample. This case results from an investigation conducted by the FBI in partnership with Homeland Security Investigations, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the Minneapolis Police Department, the Roseville Police Department, the Bloomington Police Department, the St. Louis Park Police Department, the Anoka County Sheriff's Office, and the St. Paul Police Department. The FBI is investigating Muhammad for the offenses detailed in the complaint and for additional sexual offenses. Okay? And then it says, if you believe you or your child or someone you know may be a victim of Muhammad, because it sounds like there might be more even, please call the FBI tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Call FBI. Assistant U.S. Attorney Melinda A. Williams is prosecuting the case. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And Mary Moriarty, and under her watch, under her authority, the attorneys in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. Now, there's a bunch of attorneys in that office, and I know they're all probably good. There are prosecutors who want to prosecute crimes and want to put these people away. But under Mary Moriarty, that doesn't happen. That won't happen. And here you go. What an embarrassment. And he could have been put away. You know, even that first one, 2017, I know that was delayed, but there were cases in 2018. He could have been in prison for at least a couple of these. And other people wouldn't have been victimized. And that's what the system is supposed to do. These are violent offenses. These are, in my mind, these are offenses that people don't stop doing. They will. He is emboldened. He gets away with it. 5 victims? 5? At least 5 victims. 5 victims on the charge, on the complaint. At least 5 victims. And we're talking about gang rapes, and we're talking about weapons involved. We're talking about kidnapping. He transported the one woman from Mankato to Minneapolis, 70 miles. Lots of terrible conduct here. Again, any one of those things, if you look up the statute and look up what you could get charged and what the amount of time you could serve, it's astronomical for any one of those charges. He should be found guilty, hopefully, of enough of this stuff so that he will get the minimum 20 years. He might even get 30 or 40 years, and he should, for all of this. And they let him off with probation. They stayed a 5-year sentence and let him off with probation. And within a couple of months, he may have even assaulted somebody else in between there who didn't report. How many people didn't report this, that he's done this to? That happens too. And so a couple of months after he got out and got on probation, he committed another offense. criminal justice system is flawed already, and now you guys do this kind of stuff. It's ridiculous. It's disgusting. You make the predators out to be victims. You make it political. It's not political. He's guilty of, well, he's pled guilty to 2 in state court, and the allegations against him are horrific, and he needs to go to prison for a long, long time. So that's the case that I wanted to highlight. Again, Snapchat is the devil's app, and all apps like it, especially for your kids. Especially for your kids. There's so much on there. Sextortion was one of the cases that I was trained on, and I know about it. I know a lot about it, but we got a presentation from a dad whose kid was sextorted. Kind of a weird word, but he got kind of catfished. He got talked into providing a nude picture, and all within a couple hours. He provided that. They turned around and said, I'm going to send this picture to all your friends and family. Pay. And the kid couldn't pay. He could pay a little bit. He did pay a couple $100, but that's all he had. He was a kid. And then they said, nope, we need more. We need more. And they ended up sending the picture apparently out anyway. And he took his own life. And that's on things just like that. Snapchat, any messenger, anything like that. They can get hooked so quickly with the offer of nude pics from somebody that they think is a real young woman or girl their age. And yeah, and look at this. This guy uses Snapchat. 5 victims. I think almost all of them met him on Snapchat or knew him on Snapchat, and he used Snapchat to facilitate this stuff. So anyway, that's it. Steve Loomis with Walking That Mile.